Hi everyone, welcome to the Drone Nerds Tech Talk on the new FLIR Vue TZ20 sensor. Thank you for joining us. I'm Michelle McMillan, Marketing Director at Drone Nerds. I have Sam Sacalis here, Enterprise Lead at Drone Nerds, and we're lucky to have Brett Kanda, UAS Business Development Manager from FLIR with us to tell us about the TZ20. This Tech Talk is going to be recorded and we're going to send out a link to everyone who registered tomorrow. Now I'm going to hand it over to Sam.
Thanks, Michelle. Brett, glad we could have you on here. Glad we could go ahead and go over the brand new FLIR Vue TZ20. I'm really excited to talk about it, man.
As am I. Thanks for having me.
For sure. So let's go ahead and let's jump right in. I know that FLIR's been working on this camera for quite some time, and what's really exciting about it is the different platforms that it can actually go on, and the different use cases that it's going to have. So if you want to go ahead and just kind of take the lead here, and let's dive right into what the FLIR Vue TZ20 is and what its capabilities are and who it's really targeted towards.
Yeah, perfect. So I'll do about a 10-15 minute presentation here on the product, and then we can just move right into a Q&A, and we'll try to get through as many questions as we possibly can. So I think it's important to start at the origin of the camera. Quite a few years back, FLIR and DJI collaborated to build the Zenmuse XT and the Zenmuse XT2, with the Zenmuse XT2 really being a revolutionary camera and one that we've seen a lot of demand for and heard a lot of positive feedback about over the years. And so we took that camera as the baseline and really wanted to build towards something that fits market needs. And so what we've been hearing from the market over the past few years and while we've been developing this camera is that thermal zoom is a really important feature to have for a lot of users, whether you be in public safety or industrial inspection. The ability to narrow in on a target is really important. Another piece of feedback that we received from the market is that there were too many options for camera SKUs, whether that be lens, frame rate, resolution. And so we made it really easy for everybody. This camera has one SKU. And so that it's easy to make a decision. We understand how many M200s, M210s, and now M300s are going to be in the marketplace. And we wanted to build a camera and a payload that is compatible with current systems and airframes. And then moving forward, we're going to continue to innovate and build different versions of the TZ20. But let's get right into some of the specs of the camera. So this is some of the first imagery that we've gotten of the payload. It features a dual Boson configuration. Now, for those of you that have used the XT or the XT2, the thermal core that's inside of that camera is the Tau 2. This is our newest thermal core, the Boson. You will notice that the camera is not radiometric, and that is because the Boson core is not yet radiometric. So in the future, as Boson has radiometric features, we will likely release a version of the TZ20 with radiometry. But we built this payload on top of the DJI PSDK in collaboration with DJI. It's fully integrated with the M200 series version 2 and the new M300 RTK. So both thermal cores in this camera have a 640 by 512 high resolution core. In the past, we did give users the option to use a 336 by 256 option. And, based on feedback from the market, we decided to stick with the 640 by 512 because most of the drone community prefers higher resolution camera. Right. So the most unique feature of this camera is that one of the Boson cores has a very wide field of view in the 18-degree field of view. And then the other camera is going to have a narrow field of view. So you are able to fly and have wide situational awareness and ultimately zoom in on a target. And in a few minutes here, we'll get into some actual imagery and you can see the zoom capabilities of this camera. But that's really the biggest selling point, is having two thermal cores inside of one payload, which up until this point has not been done in the drone industry. So this is an innovative product in that sense, and we're really excited about it.
Yeah, I want to say too, like something I really like about the fact that you guys have integrated the actual Boson into like a Zenmuse type of camera is the fact that, beforehand we used to have to actually integrate the Boson with like some form of mount that we would have to make or machine or anything like that, and then figure out how to provide a power source, figure out how to actually get it integrate it onto the drone itself, get a video signal, all that good stuff. The fact that it's done directly through the SDK just makes it that much easier for plug and play and use.
Absolutely, absolutely. And you know, if you've been paying attention to the drone market, you're going to see a lot of new thermal payloads that are utilizing the Boson core. It's our newest core. It's got lower swap and enhanced image quality. It does have the ability to integrate some machine vision and AI onto it, which we will be doing here in the very near future. So moving forward, the Boson is really going to be the thermal core of choice for our payloads and for the commercial drone industry. So, you know, diving into the specs here a little bit, the weight is 640 grams, a little bit heavier than the XT2. The gimbal is using the DJI Skyport 2.0. This is a 12 micron pitch, long wave infrared camera. The wide field of view is a, well, this is actually, should be backwards here. The wide field of view is 18 degrees, narrow field of view is 95 degrees. Let's see here. The zoom capability is 5x, 10x, and 20x. The 2x and the 5x are going to be optical zoom, while the 10x and 20x will be digital zoom. The recording, right now we have still imagery being recorded in TIFF format, but we are making a slight change before we go into production with the camera, and we will be able to have JPEG file formats recorded in the camera. For video, it'll be MPEG, streaming at 640 by 512 and 30 hertz. It's going to be just like the XT2 with a dual micro SD card slot. And we decided to build everything on top of the DJI Pilot app for this payload so that users don't need to switch apps for their operations. They can stick with the DJI Pilot app, and all of the features are going to be built into that.
That's great too, especially for the 300 series, because they're using the enterprise smart controllers. So
exactly,
perfect.
exactly. So we wanted to make it simple and easy for users to not have to swap over, and the camera's IP44 rated, so you can fly it in adverse weather conditions. Okay, so like I mentioned before, this camera is not radiometric, so it's really ideal for qualitative users, and I think this is a really important concept for everybody to understand. Radiometry is the science of extracting exact temperature values out of every pixel. Now, the Boson is still doing that. However, we have not gotten it to the point of where you can output an RJPEG or a radiometric file. We're very close to being able to do that. So we really built this camera for public safety users that are not necessarily reliant on temperature values for their operations. And so we took feedback from firefighters, police departments, search and rescue teams, and we asked them, you know, how important is radiometry to your application? And for a lot of them, they said, we don't use it at all. So because that's such a big user group within the drone industry, we felt like it was okay to not have radiometry in this version and have that not be a huge setback. Now, having said that, for all of our industrial inspection users, this camera is still going to work for you. And when I chat with end users in the drone industry and they say, yeah, but I like using radiometry, that's great. And you can still stick with the XT2 to get radiometric file output. But I tend to ask two questions. I ask them, are you doing an in-field reflective apparent temperature test? And are you doing an in-field emissivity test? And not to mention, are you taking into account the humidity in the air? So if the answer is no to any of those three questions, the ability for you to get a plus or minus 3 degree absolute temperature reading with any level of accuracy is going to be very, very difficult. So what I see in the drone industry is that a lot of users think they need radiometry for their operations when in reality they don't. And so for the industrial inspection users, you're going to be able to, let's take solar panel inspection as an example for a use case. If you have a large scale asset, you're going to be able to fly less paths. You're going to be able to stay in the air longer because you're going to have a wide field of view. And if you happen to see an anomaly in your field of view, you're going to be able to zoom in 20 times and make sure that what you're seeing is actually a problem or an anomaly. So this is still a useful camera for industrial inspection users. And we do hear about RF interference if for people flying around telecommunication poles or electric assets and power lines. And so for operators that want to have a further standoff distance, to not have to deal with that type of interference, you're going to be able to use this camera to stay further away from your target and ultimately zoom in on smaller targets. So I don't want the industry to think that this camera is only for public safety. It can be used for a variety of different use cases. And again, our next version of this camera will have radiometry. So just really wanted to spend a lot of time on the difference between quantitative and qualitative, and why it shouldn't be a red flag for the drone industry that the TZ20 is a non-radiometric camera.
Yeah, and I also want to mention too that we got this question that this is going to work for the entire 200 series range as long as they're V2 models. So the 200, the 210, and the 210 RTK, as well as the 300 series. Another question we'd gotten was agricultural use, and Brad, we kind of spoke about this yesterday a little bit. There's not really much use for this camera when it comes to agriculture, aside from maybe looking for extreme pockets of saturation or anything like that when it comes to water, or even extreme temperatures in the actual field itself, maybe where a little bit more irrigation needs to be addressed in that area. But more or less, there's other cameras available on the market, and feel free to reach out to us afterwards to help point you in the right direction. But the TZ20 is mostly going to be for public safety, search and rescue, and then a couple other applications, as Brett had mentioned.
Yeah, absolutely. Agriculture, I tend to push everybody towards multispectral when it comes to agriculture operators, and Sam's exactly right. The really only value proposition for thermal and agriculture is to be able to monitor your moisture within your field. So good points there, Sam. Okay, so now let's get into some sample imagery. So this is going to be no zoom at all, just one time standard field of view. Let's see here. Can you see my cursor here, Sam? Can you see my mouse?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, fantastic. So these three light poles here are going to be our focus point and what we're going to zoom in on here. I'd have to get an exact distance, but this is approximately 1,000 to 1,500 yards away. So starting to narrow our field of view, this is a 2x zoom. And I do want to note for everybody that we have made some image quality enhancements for the production units. These images were still from our demo units and our R&D units. So I don't want anybody to be alarmed by the quality of the image, because it has been improved and enhanced. Okay, now we go into a 5x zoom, starting to get closer and closer, 10x, and now all the way into a 20x zoom. So this is a really good visual representation of what the camera is capable of doing, and take this and enhance the imagery, and that's what you're going to be able to do with it. So really, really useful for search and rescue operations, fire operations, to where you need to surveil a large, wide area, but still be able to zoom in on your target and point of interest. So for our international users, this is an export controlled camera. It is only available in a 30 hertz option. So just a quick note here that if you are in an international market, we will need end use statements, and we will need to ensure that this is not going to any foreign militaries without us knowing it. So any questions for this, feel free to reach out to the Drone Nerds team or myself directly, and we can help guide you through getting this across borders. Pricing. This camera, like I said, is only one SKU. So that means one price, and it is $7,500 MSRP per unit. So we think this is a really solid price point for the drone industry, especially with the pricing of the new M300. We are receiving a lot of positive feedback about this price. So again, feel free to reach out to the Drone Nerds team, but we made pricing and product selection really simple with this product. All right, let's hop into Q&A.
Sure. So some of the questions that I've gotten so far that seem to be kind of the standard, people want to know if this is going to be backwards compatible into the 200 V1 series.
So it's only going to be compatible with version 2 series. So
Okay.
not V1.
Another question we've gotten was, looking at the actual footage when you're showing the zoomed in footage itself, was that in feet or yards?
Yards.
Yards, 1,500 yards, okay. So will this camera be supported by Pix4D?
Yeah, so any thermal camera is going to be supported by Pix4D, and that's a really good question. And we are still in the early phases of analyzing how useful this camera is going to be for thermal mapping. Because right now, the standard protocol and workflow is to really use the RGB layer of data to be the base layer of a map, and then putting the thermal layer on top of that. Now with this camera, because there's not an RGB camera on board, you are going to have two different, field of view thermal files. So we're running it through all of the processes now to see how viable it is for mapping, and we're going to be putting out quite a bit of content around this topic. So stay tuned. We are going to have a lot more insight into how this works with all the photogrammetry and GIS software as we move forward.
Okay, and then kind of like what we did yesterday, can you go over what files this camera is actually going to save as?
Yeah, so it's going to save in still imagery in a JPEG and a TIFF format, and the video output will be MPEG.
Okay. This is a dual camera. Just a quick answer there for somebody.
Mm-hmm.
So this is going to be a dual camera. Are you able to analyze any of the images with slant view?
With what?
Slant view.
Slant view.
Yeah.
I am not familiar with slant range or slant view.
Slant view.
Slant view. I'm not familiar with slant view.
No problem. We'll come back to that one.
Yeah. Yeah.
So as far as it goes for like roofing inspections, for example, we have somebody that uses them pretty continuously for commercial roofing.
Yeah.
Would this camera actually be useful for them?
This is a perfect camera for roof inspections because you're going to be able to fly lower, so have a really, really good resolution. You're going to be able to see the entire roof from one location, and you will be able to zoom in on any type of anomaly that you can see. So yes, absolutely. This is an ideal camera for large scale commercial roof inspections.
Perfect. And I'd also like to mention too, some of my clientele that do roof inspections, the fact that this will work with the 300s and the 210 V2s, you can use the top mounts to be able to do the
Yes.
roof also on the edges and on the sides as well. So this is a phenomenal camera.
Absolutely.
Just for that. So one of the other questions we were getting is, in comparison to the HT20 series, thermal-wise, how does this stack up to it?
Well, there's a huge difference. The H20T is not FLIR inside. So it's a completely different thermal core. And that's the main difference. Now, as far as the features go, the H20T does have the laser rangefinder as well as RGB cameras and zoom capabilities. But, for the purposes of comparison, that's the biggest difference, is that it's not FLIR inside of the H20T.
And more or less, do you have a timeline on the radiometric version of the TZ20?
Yeah, I saw that comment. Yes, we have been saying that radiometry for Boson has been coming for a while now. But we are putting serious pressure on product management to have radiometry and Boson by the end of the calendar year. And so for a few different users, large scale users, mostly in the defense space, we do have a radiometric Boson. But to get it out to the industrial market and at the scale that we need to meet, we're almost there.
Okay. The standard pallets that are available when using like XT2s, is that still going to be crossing over to the TZ20s?
You'll have the exact same palette options as the XT2, exactly. So you'll have a quick start menu on the home page of the Pilot app where you're going to be able to access 5 different palettes, and it's your standard ones. It's going to be white hot, black hot, iron bow, fusion, and one other. And then if you go one level deeper into the sub menu, you'll be able to access 10 different color palettes.
Okay, and then can we go a little bit into FLIR Tools as well? I know we discussed it yesterday. There's not a massive amount of use for the TZ20 with FLIR Tools, but there is some use, some capability being used with FLIR Tools. Can you touch on that a little bit?
Yeah, definitely. It's compatible with FLIR Tools, FLIR Thermal Studio. You'll be able to do your thermal tuning in there and be able to export the files that you've become accustomed to doing. And so if you are a FLIR Tools or Thermal Studio user, this camera will work for you, as well as the other software analytic options on the market. I saw there was a question about Agisoft. Should be
Yeah.
totally fine.
Okay. Yeah, it's kind of wanted to get into the different applications that we can actually use the camera with. And as far as it goes with any kind of calibration or any kind of tuning, what warranty are customers getting? What's the upkeep that's recommended on the TZ20 series?
Yeah, so the warranty is going to be the standard 1-year warranty. Because this camera was fully developed by FLIR, this is not a camera that you'll be able to buy through DJI. This is going to be sold exclusively through FLIR. As far as calibration goes, just like the XT2, this camera is calibrated in-house. Every camera that we produce at FLIR goes through a very, very rigorous calibration period, and this is no different. So you will not need to do anything with this camera. As far as calibration goes, and the maintenance, should be on par with every other FLIR camera you've owned. And so, we pride ourselves on reliability and longevity. And again, this camera is not going to be an exception to that.
And as far as it goes with anything with FLIR Tools, is there anything specific coming out available for Mac, for iOS?
Not in the near term. Our software and Thermal Studio and Tools is actually handled by a different division within FLIR that's handled by our Tabby suite and Office. And I would need to check with them to see what the Mac compatibility roadmap looks like for the future. So, I can put my email address here in the chat or the Q&A. So if anybody has any questions, feel free to just email me directly and I can give you a good answer there.
Yeah, and what we'll do actually afterwards, Michelle will put the video together for everybody and include everybody's information.
Yeah,
So that way they have
great.
your email, my email, and can reach out to all of us.
Perfect.
So as far as it goes for like inspecting any kind of wind turbines, I know you touched on solar panels a little bit earlier. Can you dive into that a little bit? What are the actual, aside from just search and rescue, which I know this is what this is heavily marketed towards right now. But we do have some people that will do search and rescue, or even police departments that will do search and rescue, and then use the drone within their department, within their community, with other departments that work with them to be able to actually do other inspections as well. So is there some kind of versatility to this unit?
Yeah, the versatility is the zoom feature, right? So you can now, let's see, so the XT2 has a 5-time digital zoom. And that's mostly through the RGB camera. So the real value in this is that you can stay further away from the wind turbine as far as your flight profile goes. And if you happen to see something that pops up from your wide field of view, I mean, you saw in the imagery, you're going to be able to really get tight on that anomaly to make sure it is what it is. And if you have a dual payload configuration and you have, say, a Z30 as well, you can just toggle over to your RGB camera. And that was really our thought process with this camera for this version to not have an RGB option, is that we feel that a lot of users in the drone industry already have a very high resolution zoom capable RGB camera, and it might not be on the same airframe as you're flying. So that is why we wanted to engineer this camera to have thermal zoom, because that was the most important thing. So for any type of inspection, again, you're going to be able to get pixels on target at really long distances and be able to really confirm with confidence that anomaly that you think you see, as opposed to the XT2 or another camera with a 5-time zoom. The 20 times going to be able to really enhance the image quality as you zoom in and see what your problem might be.
And if you don't mind, can we jump back over to those slides real quick, just to be able to show everybody how the zoom functionality itself is going to look and how it's going to work as well?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I can kind of go through this quickly. So, and what you're looking at here is actually our facility in Goleta, California. This is our camera room lab where we have all of our thermal cores and do all of our testing on our optics. And so this is the main parking lot at FLIR. I saw there was a question, is this in feet or yards? It's in yards. It's a very, very big parking lot. And those light poles are pretty far away. So again, let's take an example that you want to stay this far away from your target, whether that be a wind turbine, whether that be a substation, whether that be a cell phone tower, whatever you're trying to inspect. You know, you're really going to be able to get great image quality, resolution as you zoom in. So now if there was an anomaly on this light pole, you would be able to see it with a high level of confidence,
Right.
especially with the enhanced image quality that the Boson provides.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I can just see it, especially for public safety. This is going to be massive for them.
Yeah,
You know,
absolutely.
in massive areas of search and rescue, whether they're doing it in the woods or anything like that. I mean, just the clarity of the image that we're seeing here and the fact that you're able to zoom so much into it is going to be extremely useful for them.
And first responders too, right, Sam? I mean,
Absolutely.
it's hard to ignore what's happening in California right now.
Right.
I wish we had this camera in the hands of firefighters and first responders right now while they're fighting this, because it would be extremely valuable. These wildfires are such large scale that you need this type of situational awareness at the one-time level. And you know, if you have a fire encroaching on a city, you're going to need to see what assets in that city are going to be, you know, initial targets. And so being able to do this, you know, will allow you to do that. You know, the Gulf and all of the you know, during hurricane season now for search and rescue, same concept, right? You know, if you have a city that's flooded, you're going to need to have a very wide field of view, situational awareness, and be able to zoom in to see if you see a human that you're trying to find, or whatever the target may be. It's really going to be mission critical to be able to do this.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, I think we've gone over a majority of the questions that people have asked us here. We've gone through the platforms that they're going to be compatible with, the actual use cases of the camera itself, its resolution, the different standards that are available for it. Let's go ahead and talk about availability for this camera. More or less, when can we expect it?
Yeah, absolutely. Before we hop into that, I do see a question here about continuous zoom to 20x, or is it switching between the field of views? And that's a really good question that I want to touch on real quick. And the answer is that it's switching between the field of views. It's switching between the bosons. We do have other cameras, not drone payloads, that do have up to 20 time continuous zoom. And I think over time we will integrate that into our drone payloads. But for this one, it's switching back and forth between the two thermal cores. And the spatial resolution on this camera is 640 by 512 in both thermal cores. It is not compatible with the Inspire. So availability, we are going to be shipping mass production units at the beginning of October. We are taking pre-orders now through all of our distribution network, including Drone Nerds, obviously. So you can, you know, submit orders now, but expect early to mid-October for delivery of the camera.
Okay, perfect. And it automatically integrates right away with FLIR Tools and all the other third-party applications, no issues whatsoever.
Plug and play.
Perfect. Perfect.
Plug and play. And we are working directly with some of the software companies in the photogrammetry space to make sure that they optimize their algorithms for this lens configuration and resolution. Pix4D, Drone Deploy, a lot of the photogrammetry companies out there really have built towards the XT2 13 millimeter 640 by 512 camera. So we're continuing to work with them to make sure that they can, you know, easily and accurately integrate this camera into their workflows as well. So, you know, depending on what software you use, we will be working with them over time to make sure that everything is running properly.
Perfect. All right. Well, I think we got most of the questions down. We got lots of information here with the TZ20s. Like you said, they're coming around beginning of October to mid-October. If anybody here has any questions or anything like that, guys, just reach out to us. As I said before, We're going to be sending this video out afterwards to everybody with our contact information as well. Brett, I really appreciate your time today. I really appreciate you showing us the TZ20 series. I'm excited for it. I can't wait to see what everybody's going to be able to do with this kind of camera, and I can't wait to see seeing it in our hands.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Sam. We're excited about it as well. I'm really curious to hear the market feedback once it starts to getting into people's hands, and we will be working on future versions of this camera as well, to include radiometry and potentially a high resolution RGB camera as well. So thanks again. If you have any questions at all, my email is very simple. It's brett.kanda@FLIR.com, but Michelle and Sam will make sure you all have that. And the Drone Nerds team has all the answers as well when it comes to this question. So feel like you have two resources with this, but thanks for the time, and we're excited about it.
Absolutely. Brett, thank you again. Guys, everybody have a great day, and thanks for tuning in.
Take care, guys. Thanks again.
Bye.
Bye-bye.